Right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's cold here in the Finger Lakes. I'm not sure about where you are, but I'm sitting here with a blanket and a space heater, so I hope you're doing better than I am, or you have a nice warm drink. We are thrilled to have our presenter back with us today. I'm going to give you a brief introduction, and then we'll get into it. So, Trevor Johnson-Steigelman, PhD, is an associate professor of physics at Finger Lakes Community College. He's been teaching for over 2 decades and taught online courses for nearly a decade. For the last few years, he's been teaching using the HyFlex modality. He uses OER textbooks and various technologies to enhance his courses, as you'll see today. He uses his website, physicsthisweek.com, to help students at FLCC and other schools learn the fundamentals of physics. He's also been researching and sharing ways to integrate generative AI into effective teaching practices, which brings him to us today. You can visit his website, coachesoftech.com/AI, where you can find more information about AI in education. And we also have some slides that we'll be sharing with you today from this presentation. So I'll be active in the chat. I'll be monitoring for any questions you have as we go along, and we'll be sure to ask Trevor those questions at the end. So welcome, everyone. Let us know where you're from in the chat, and we'll get started. Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you, Erin. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. It is cold but sunny here, which this time of year, the sun I'm happy with. I don't get mad about cold until Mother's Day. But it's so far a nice day here today. So I want to talk to you today about hands-on teaching enhancements using AI. And the idea of this is I'm going to actually have you on a browser window on your own computer, jump in and try some prompts. This is designed for beginner to intermediate users to kind of get you on the road to trying things out. Your students are certainly trying things out right now. So the more you get in and kind of play around with AI, I think the better you'll understand what the capabilities are or aren't for your students. So you may notice that I am still sharing my screen. Just want to make sure. So I'm a WebEx native. So with Zoom, I'm always just a hair behind with what's going on. So my slides are actually a Word document. I've found with accessibility challenges, especially with equations, that I've started putting everything into Word. It doesn't have all the fancy bells and whistles that PowerPoint does, but it turns out to be a little bit more friendly from an accessibility standpoint. And hopefully I will try to remember to actually use my page up, page down buttons rather than clicking my mouse within Word, because it doesn't quite behave the same way. So please bear with me with that if you notice anything weird happening. Okay, I've got two useful links here for you. The first is the one that Erin mentioned for coachesoftech.ai or coachesoftech.com/AI. I do have other presentations available up there on the website, and the whole website's there for you to check out. For this particular presentation, I did put the link into the chat, but if you use the QR code there, you can get to this presentation in the form that I'm presenting with today with a Word document. And I hope I said it right so nobody can edit this while I'm presenting today. Okay, just a couple of things to let you know, because this is an AI talk. The first is the session is being recorded, and I believe there is an AI that is going to take summary notes and things like that are going on. If you need to step out at any point, please feel free to do that. Any type of reaction, if something triggers you during the talk, or you just need to get up, use the restroom, or get some fresh coffee, please feel certain to do that. And if you do have any questions, put those in the chat. If you put a Q in front of it, it might be helpful for us to find those as we're going down through. And feel free to talk with each other in the chat. I have it running past me. I will try to look in on that as I go. And then at certain points, I will spend a little more time for that as well. Okay, so a few things with AI. The horse is out of the bag, the cat's out of the barn. AI is not going away. I used to say it's here and not going away, but everybody knows it's here at this point. I'm pretty sure that the AI apocalypse is not going to be caused by this current generation of generative AI. Might be the next one or the next one after that, but I think we're safe for the time being. Most of your students are already using AI in some ways. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about ethical issues related to AI. There is some bias. I will talk about that briefly. There are concerns with copyright, with access for different students, and even professors that can't, whether we can afford or not, the expensive models. And of course, there are environmental things that are related to AI, but I'm not going to really talk about those today. And I'm also assuming that you will be using AI in the next semester or two, if you're not already. Okay, so most of you are at least hopefully somewhat familiar with AI. Remember, you are the user and you're interacting with AI. You interact through a prompt. The AI has a model that are all of the information that includes all the information that has been put into the system, kind of its database. And then it spends a lot of time during training where it actually goes out and looks for different types of connections between different things, different components of the data that it has. So it looks for obvious connections like physics and kinematics, but it also looks for other things like physicists and Star Wars and just anywhere that you can get in there with those types of things. The AI looks at that model, interacts with it a little bit, and then sends you a response. And I have this as a loop because as you go through AI, if you think of it as a conversation, and I know some people have problems with conversing with AI, but if you treat it kind of in your mind that you're going back and forth, you can add some context. That's information that will help let the AI know what you're looking for. And you fine tune that through a prompt, much in the same way that you might ask somebody for directions. And then you start asking more questions to get details. Do I turn left at this intersection or right at that intersection? Of course, before you actually use the information, you should evaluate it. And that's probably the most important part. If you just use AI, copy and paste what it gives you out, you are going to have a bad time at some point. And then, of course, hopefully you're going to use the information that you get out in some useful type of a way. Okay, so kind of a meta description here. That image that I had, I put an alt text in with it, but this is a little bit more information, which I like with Word because students can come right to here, or I can just skip over this slide really quickly and move on. Okay, I'm pardoning my phone going off in the background. Okay, so you should be aware of bias that's in the training, the data that the model that the AI is using. Remember, you are an expert in your field and you have experience with your students. So anything that you put into or take out of AI, you should make sure that you are questioning that, you're looking at its accuracy, look for any biases that are showing up, and make sure that it's appropriate for the audience that you plan to share it with. Okay, so just as an example of some kind of hidden biases that may or may not be in your particular model, about a year ago, I put in a prompt for, and I just said, create an image of a college professor. I was using Gemini Advanced 2.5 Pro, and you can see the results here. So take a minute to look at those pictures, and do you see any biases in there? If you want to throw those in the chat, I would appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm seeing information about the brown jackets. Notice they all kind of look tweedish. Um, they're all men. They all have glasses. They're all lighter skinned. Um, Notice that at least two of them have chalkboards in the background. I don't know when the last time you um, looked at a chalkboard was. I know that when I got LASIK, I was demoted from being a professor because I don't have glasses anymore. And I am upset that they don't have any that are wearing Hawaiian shirts or with larger beards. And those are the types of things that may or may not show up. With pictures like this, it's really easy to see that whenever you are looking at text, you may not, there might not be as obvious, but you do want to make sure that you're thinking about that as you go through. And you can throw in prompts to say for a diverse audience, or if there's anything specific that you're looking at for those. Okay, and a couple of other things about context and level. I'm a college professor at a community college. Whenever I type things in, and I have tried this, one of my colleagues pointed this out to me. If you go in and say, tell me about physics, um, it will either give you a short description or a huge description, depending on the specifics of the question that you ask. However, if you put in college level for a particular type of physics, it will give you a very detailed explanation. If you put in community college level, even though there shouldn't be a difference between those, because I teach physics just like I taught it when I was teaching it at a four-year school, you might get slightly less detail. Now, to be honest, I didn't notice a huge difference. If I had just put in community college, I didn't say, oh, this is crap. It's not telling me enough. But when I put in college level, it did give a little bit more within there. So keep that in mind. For most of us, I think just say college level and you'll be in good shape. If you're trying to level things out, you could put high school level, or if you really want to get simple, you can say explain it like I'm 5. But be aware that specifying the level will change the detail that comes out. Okay, and I also want to talk about prompt engineering a little bit. We're not going to be prompt engineers completely coming out of this, but I want to give you some hints on things that you can try to maybe get better responses out. So prompt engineering is defined as the process of crafting AI prompts by adding context and parameters, then improving through iteration and fine tuning. So if you think back to that image that I had earlier, where you kind of loop through that with iterations, you will get different things coming out. So typically you're going to put in an initial prompt, you're going to iterate on that prompt, fine tune that, and then validate it. So I put in some information about an engineer looking at a watch to kind of develop these two. And I believe I was using Gemini for these. And notice that putting in engineer could get you a train engineer or a drafting type of an engineer that's coming up. Notice they're both white men again. They don't both have glasses, but the one that's maybe a little closer to a professor certainly looks professor-ish in there. And the other thing I want to point out is if you look down here in the corner, it didn't quite get the prompt right, or the wording right here. I did tell it to say there's more to prompt engineering than having a good watch. And it kind of messed up here and it kind of cut things off a little bit as well. So definitely validate the things that you're producing before you put them into Brightspace or anywhere else. Okay, so the big points to take away today. The first one is you don't use AI as an answer tool. Don't just put something in and take what it has coming out. Go in and use it as a creation partner. And one of the ways you can use it as a creation partner is ask for guidance within your prompts. Say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you help? 9 times out of 10, it's going to say, certainly I can help. I've never had it not say that. ask it to ask you questions. So you might put in a prompt, ask me questions to help me focus. And then I like when I do this to say, ask questions one at a time with follow-ups as needed. If you say, just ask me questions, it might ask you 10 questions all at once. Another thing to add in is, what may I be missing in there? Okay, and just glancing at the chat, yes, there is definitely some US-centric parts to the training. I didn't realize that in the UK it's a trained driver and not an engineer. Okay, and it looks like Carlo tried the same prompt. And yes, hopefully the AI is getting better. One of the podcasts that I listen to has made a point of saying, remember, this is the worst AI you will ever use, because it is getting better as time goes on. Now, of course, what better means might change as we go, but folks are trying to make these better to get rid of some of those biases. Biases, I guess, is the right word. So if you are writing a prompt, you want to think about what type of response that you want. That is one of our parameters. What is the length of the response that you want? What is the style of the response? Do you want a bulleted list? Okay. Thank you, Maureen. I just see in the chat that certainly looks like, but notice he has a beard. It's making a step in the right direction. So I don't know if it was listening in while I was talking about that or not. I actually put a picture of myself in wearing a ball cap and with my beard and said, make this look like a college professor. It put on a jacket, it put glasses on me, and it wrote professor on the chalkboard behind me just to really make it clear. Okay, so the other things you want to put in your prompts are some context. Who's the audience that you want to share this with? What level do you want? And I mentioned the potential bias problems with putting in the level. And of course, the big part of the prompt is a question, command, or instruction. What you want to get out from your session. Now, I'm talking here about somewhat complex prompts. You don't have to have an elaborate initial prompt, but if you do sit down and think about it a little bit before you go into typing, I think you'll get a better response out in the end. Now, you can put in something simple. Hey, tell me about physics. And then, no, I'd rather we talk about kinematics rather than all of physics. So you can, thinking what you want to get done, as in most cases, if you have a little bit of a plan, I think you'll get better results overall. So here's an example of a prompt. And I have color coded this, and I realize color coding isn't the best way as far as accessibility is concerned. But notice I'm giving it some context. Assume that you are a college professor in a physics department. Most of your students are sophomores who are not physics majors. Those are important bits of information if I want to use this as a professor. And notice that I'm telling the AI to take on a persona of a college professor in a physics department. If I put in a chemistry department or economics department, I'm going to get different answers out. If you remember back to the model, it's looking for connections. And if you tell it things to connect, you'll get better responses coming out. Okay, so I do have some parameters in the second one in 300 words or less. So I don't want it to give me a novel. I don't want it to give me a few sentences. I want it to explain how Newton's second law describes the motion of a body. And then I give it a little bit more detail. Explain the variables in the equation, then describe the effects on the force as each variable is changed. So I'm not just saying, tell me about Newton's second law. I'm asking specific things that I want out from that. Okay, the conclusion is a part that's not absolutely necessary, but it goes back to that having a plan. I want this to be useful for physics students, and it will help them learn and understand Newton's second law. So I'm going to grab this and pop it into Google Gemini. And notice whenever you are working with AI, you can have a subscription or not. I do have a subscription. I can change the level of what I want to have out. When I use the pro or thinking, it does take a little bit more time and I generally get better answers. But if I use the fast one, especially during a presentation like this, I'll get some responses a little bit faster. So notice it pops things out, gives me the equation. It kind of describes the equation again because I just asked it to do that. And it talks about the relationships between those types of things. Okay. And with more modern models, it's going to ask me to provide a few practice problems involving these variables to test your understanding. So if you have a student that hopefully is not doing this during a test, but wants to learn things, having that kind of a detailed prompt and it's going to actually ask them if they would like to try it out. Okay, and Maria, more modern professor image. So it looks like the coat has changed to blue instead of brown. I guess I'm a few fashion steps behind with that. So if you say yes at this point, and again, this isn't every AI, but notice that Gemini is giving me actually a quiz here to test my things out. So tests same net force to objects. Object A has twice the mass of object B. How will their accelerations compare? A has twice the mass. Okay, notice that I got it right. Hopefully, because I'm a physics professor, I got that. And let's see. Now, this one I'm going to get wrong on purpose. Constant velocity in straight line, net force. Okay, for this one, it gave me the wrong answer. I clicked the wrong answer. It told me what the right answer was and gave some explanation. Okay, so I could play with AI all day, but I'm going to get back out of that. But what I want you to do now is start thinking about how you would use this yourself. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to set some concept or set some context. We're going to clarify what we're trying to figure out. We're going to write a prompt or two. We're going to fine tune the prompt as we get feedback. We're going to create multiple versions of some of the things that we do, and we're going to validate whatever our response is. And we're going to try to think like a beginner. We're going to try to motivate our students and perhaps create some assessments. Okay, so in your tool of choice, start a new chat, and we're going to add some context. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it in there into the chat for those of you who are slow typers. So feel free to copy that, put it in, and see what you get, see what the response is. It's going to come out. It, depending on your model, it may jump right into talking about things. It might ask you some more questions. And I totally realize that I should shut up while you're doing this. But if you want to describe your students, a little bit more, that might be helpful. You might describe your course, whether you're teaching a lecture, a seminar, or a lab course. And if you're using an open source textbook, putting that in will often try to use the same terminology that you might that your students might see in the textbook as they're coming out. And again, these are things that you might share directly with your students. You might use it to update your lecture notes and things like that. And let's move on. Whoops, to the next slide. Okay, now that you have the context, one of the things you have to watch out for as a professor. So I've been teaching physics since the late 1900s, and I know that I do have some areas where I tend to know what it is, and I've forgotten that I need to know those things. So sometimes when I'm teaching a topic, I might jump in a little bit too far in than where I should. So one of the things that I have done, and I played with when I was first starting to play with AI, is to put in something that, hey, I'm going to teach a lesson. What should I include in the lesson? Now, again, I'm not going to take this lesson and just present it. I'm going to think about it. Okay, and I see there is quite a bit up here. Okay, so, and I apologize, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name there, but looks like it went into ChatGPT and it really started to modify things and put it in. Yep. Okay, so you can see, and I'm not going to read everything that comes out of there, but by having AI as kind of your thought partner with this, it's going to make you think a little bit deeper than I'm just trying to write things down or I'm trying to type things into PowerPoint or so on. You've got a lot of information in your head. AI can help you start to draw those things out. Okay, and I see that Aaron said that it not only gives suggestions, but it tells me how the suggestions will help. So the output that you got, I want you to think about, are there things that you've been glossing over in your classes? Were there some things there that you think, oh, yeah, I used to always have a slide or two about that, or I used to always write that on the chalkboard to make sure my students were following, but have I put that up for modern students? Um, are there any parts that you've forgotten about? And again, it might not be forgotten, but you just don't normally think to put in. And are there any parts of that output you haven't thought about recently? Yeah, so Maureen, you will get lots of ideas that you can put in. Um, and again, as you're thinking about how students are using AI and how you're using AI, if students are just typing in, here's the question, what's the answer, and copying that out, that's not good. They're not really learning things. But if they're using this as a way to deepen their understanding, imagine how much better it could be for them to have an interactive textbook where it could talk back and forth. They could ask it questions back and forth. That is something that's coming down the line. Things like Khan Academy are already doing that. SUNY sometime soon will be offering an AI tutor of some form in one form or another. But if you can get your students to think about, why am I here? Am I here as an answer machine, or am I here to learn? And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for us as professors moving forward. Okay. Now, as a physics professor, I've got lots of examples in my mind that are really good for engineers, really good for physicists, but not necessarily for all of my students. And I realize that that's kind of a blind spot that I have. Okay, so try one of these. Where might my students have seen an example of, and pick a topic in your course recently, or list some ways that students might use topic of your choice in their daily lives, or to help students that are in your class that you know you have. So for me, I get some microbiology students, I get engineering students, I get nursing students. So I might do something like, what are some examples of physics, a topic in physics that's related to microbiology or the health sciences? So go ahead and try that prompt. And if anybody gets a really great one that you want to share in the chat, please feel free to do that. So I actually had one of our nursing professors, our health science major professors, come to me recently and say, we were talking about the possibility of starting a physics for the health sciences course, which I would really love to do. But of course, that does take a little bit more lift than adapting my current course. So what I have started to do is ask some specific questions about how might a nursing student use this, and I've been trying to add those to my lectures. Okay, so that's one way to motivate your students, or multiple ways to motivate your students. The other thing that we have to worry about as professors is every year the students get younger and younger. I'm sure that has nothing to do with me getting older or older, but if you have been teaching for a while, there might be certain references that you use. In fact, as a college professor myself, I had a student who was about halfway between me and a traditional age student. She was returning adult coming back to get a degree. And she was hanging out with the other students and they were studying, and somebody said, you know, every once in a while, Dr. Johnson will stop in the middle of a lecture, like he's waiting for everyone to laugh, like he just told a joke. Um, but I never understand it. It's never very funny at all. And this student jumped to my defense and said, oh my goodness, he is so hilarious. Um, he's talking about different movies. And she gave an example, and the student said, well, who's that? Um, so you can use AI to get up to date on your cultural references. Um, and the picture that I have there is Bad Luck Brian, very popular in the 2000s, as those types of memes that came out that we used to see everywhere. I have not seen as many of these as I used to, but he actually came back as an adult in one of the Super Bowl commercials a couple of years ago. But even that is getting further and further back out there. So try something like this. I'm teaching a lesson on blank. What are some current pop cultural references related to this that would be relevant to 18 to 22-year-olds? So I'm going to do this with, oops, with Gemini and throw it up on the screen for you. Kinematics is a branch of physics. Okay, I was on a plane recently and I was looking over somebody's shoulder. I don't know if the Formula One Academy is the movie. Video games. Okay, biometrics in women's sports. Again, that's not necessarily something that I would think of, although I do have a couple with people throwing footballs and so on. Oh, physics fails in TikTok. Okay, so none of these were really out there. Um, I'm going to put one in. What are some examples of physics in K-pop Demon Hunters? And if you get something out of here that you are not sure about, the nice thing about AI is okay, and every time I do this, I get a different set of responses that I could potentially use. And if you don't understand the cultural reference, you can always do what are the K-pop Demon Hunters? And it gives some information about that. Okay, Bruce, thank you, or Bruno, thank you for sharing those for personal finance. And Aaron, you got an accessible infographic. Um, I love that idea, and I like the fact that you said accessible infographic. A lot of times, infographics um, are not very useful, but the fact that it did that is wonderful. The fact that you thought about that is wonderful. Okay, so now I want to move into some assessments here in the next 10 minutes or so. A couple of things that you should be aware of. And I'm using guidelines from OpenAI. I haven't looked at the most recent versions of these, but at one point they said you must not use any output relating to a person for any purpose that could have legal or material impact. And one of the categories is educational on there. I will make questions for my students using AI, but I will not use AI to grade those questions. I think there's a subtle difference there between the two. Um, and I think we should all be aware of that. A lot of times in these types of situation, a presentation like this, people ask, how can I get it to correct uh, my lab reports? I would say stay away from that. You should always have the human in the loop. You should review it before it's being used. I recommend that you use AI for creating questions, for making rubrics, designing lessons, and providing some formative feedback. But don't use it for grading questions. Don't use it for grading your writing assignments, and certainly not for determining grades. Don't throw students' work in and say, what kind of a grade would you give this type of a student? Okay, so we've kind of set the stage. We've asked a few questions about particular concepts. I would recommend that you spend a little bit more time digging down into a particular concept before you ask it to make some questions. But we're going to now ask AI to make some questions that we might be able to use as part of our assessments. Again, this would be something that I would give my students, and then I would grade the responses to it. Unless it's a multiple choice question, in that case, I would go through and make sure they all make sense. And then, of course, I would let Brightspace correct the multiple choice questions. Okay, so let's use an example of an essay question for an exit ticket. So let's make a exit ticket essay question related to, I think this time I will actually remember to send that out, where students should mention 2 key points and give an example of each. So go ahead and try that, and then ask it to make a rubric for grading. And then you can ask it for some model essays. Now, of course, as a professor, you probably already have ideas of what should be in there, but by using AI with this, it might give you ideas that, oh, these are things that students might do, and you have a chance to kind of pre-grade where you can look at that and say, you know what, that's a great idea. I wouldn't have thought of that on my own. And perhaps if a student had done that, I might have been, tunnel vision of what I'm really expecting versus what are potential good answers that are out there. Now, the beauty of an exit ticket activity like this is if you have your students write it down on paper before they leave, it's a little more difficult for them to have AI do it, especially if you say, close your computers, fill this out, and hand it to me on your way out of the room. Now, of course, the danger of that is that you have to go in and read it on paper. You have to carry the paper around from class to class, maybe from building to building, maybe from campus to campus. But it helps AI. I don't want to say AI proof it, but it makes it a little more AI resistant. Okay, so without going full details on what types of things you're getting out with this, are folks seeing things that are reasonable, unreasonable, to give you an idea of things that you might be able to use? Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, if you can start out with that initial prompt and get that nailed down and then clarify it going through, um, you'll certainly get better answers than, tell me about physics, tell me about economics, or whatever topic it happens to be. Okay, so we are coming up close to the end of time, but notice with AI, while the danger is that students, if AI can write the question, AI can answer the question, and students could just use AI to answer the questions with it. But rather than sit down and try to make up all of your own questions, if you have questions that you already have, you can put those into AI and say, give me variations on this. Um, Help me create more questions to put in my test bank. Not that you're going to ask more questions, but you make it so that there are more questions out there that can come in different ways to probe students on a topic. You can also add feedback to your questions. Um, that feedback, especially for formative assessments, can be really handy. Now, this is beyond um, the time that I have today, but if you follow this link about Brightspace quizzes, if you want to put these into a test bank, um, there is a quiz question converter in Brightspace, and that link will take you to a section here where it talks about that, and it will actually put it into a format that you can take the AI response, put it into the quiz question converter, and have it pop out the other end. Now, you do have to do some playing around with putting the quiz question converter into Brightspace, and you do have to be careful about the format that comes out. Thank you, Aaron, for putting that in there into the chat. But folks, feel free to try that out. And if you have any questions, you can send me those at Trevor.Johnson-Steigelman. I just put my email into the chat there. So you can do that, or you can play around and do some other neat things. So at the CIT conference coming up, I'm going to give an overview on the first day of the conference. But one of my close friends from Brockport is going to be talking about vibe coding. One of the things that I was able to do was produce a little web app that students could use and hopefully not just go in and play around with, but could actually do a calculation to see how to solve this particular type of a problem and get things out, which is going to be a little more interactive than typical. I also went in and figured out how I could get Brightspace to, or I'm sorry, could get AI to write some code that I could put into Brightspace. So I've put these things in where students can do a concept check. That is not, it's not graded. In fact, I tell students to go back and do these a couple of times, and it puts things in and it gives students multiple choice questions. If they get it wrong, it will give them a hint. And they can go back and try these out as much as they like. Oops. Okay, so kind of the process for multiple choice questions is you want to have it create a question. And then, of course, you want to validate that question. Make sure that it's right, that it's talking about the right types of things. And then you can ask for variations. So make 3 different versions so students can't sit down together and take the quiz or the exam at the same time. And then you can add that feedback to the questions so that students get some feedback, whether it's immediate or when they're reviewing the quiz for those. Okay. And I realize I kind of went through that last little bit pretty quickly. Aaron, thank you for putting those presentation notes up. And I see you put the link in for the YouTube channel. We appreciate that. But make sure that you're checking things out. You're always evaluating them before you use them. You can iterate to make better responses and think of AI as a partner to help you out. Tonka, thank you. Lumi, most campuses have rolled that out. Or I'm sorry, rolled that out, not ruled it out. Yeah, so Lumi is there. It can throw questions into Brightspace, ready to go. It does work within the course materials that you have. If you haven't had a chance to test that out, talk to the instructional designers on your campus. They should be able to help you out with that. I like to do them on my own outside. I feel that it gives me a little bit more control over it. And then I can also use it in different contexts. So it's not stuck in Brightspace. I can put it on my own website and use them out and beyond. So thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate your attention today. I did put my email in there if anybody has any questions. And like I said, thanks for coming today. And hopefully this will help you use AI a little bit more effectively down the road.
Thank you, Trevor. Lots of great examples and activities for us to try. I appreciate this being hands-on for us. I do hope everyone was able to try out those prompts, and you do have the link to the presentation if you want to go back to any of that, and great recommendations for us to consider. I did put some links in the chat for everyone. There's a link to where we will post the recording of this webinar on our YouTube playlist. So just give me about 24 hours, get the video captioned, and we'll get that up there. There is a link to SUNY Online Webinars. We have 2 more coming up this semester next month. If you're interested, you can register for those. Again, the presentation link and the link to the Coaches of Tech website, where you can get more information on Trevor and some other great resources that you have there on that website. So I always appreciate learning from you, Trevor. Thanks for joining us today. And thank you to everyone in the chat for that participation too.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you're welcome to everybody. Thanks to you for coming.
Great.